Welcome to the third unit of this business statistics, and we will be talking about index numbers in this unit. In this first module, we'll be starting with the definition of index numbers and the various types of index numbers that we come across. To start with the definition, an index number is a measure of variation in a variable. Okay, this variable can be the price, quantity, value, okay, depending on our interest. So it's a measure of variation in a variable compared with that variable at a specified earlier time. So basically we want to measure how much a variable has varied, okay, in a current particular period with respect to some previous period. Okay, so it's a relative measure. It is independent of the units in which the data is originally defined. It is widely used as indicators, okay, mostly economic indicators, to see the trends in stock markets, cost of living index, inflation, GDP, industrial growth, consumer price index, and so on. More importantly, all these are examples of index numbers: GDP, inflation rate, and so on. Index numbers can be used for individual variable or a group of related variables as well. Okay, in case it is only one variable that we are talking about, it is more of a percentage change that we are referring to. If it is a group of related variables, and in fact index numbers make better sense when we are talking about a group of related variables, where we will be talking about how much a variation has occurred in overall in this group of related variables as compared to these variables in some earlier time period. Okay. Now what index numbers do is it works as special averages. We have already learned quite a number of averages in the previous modules, like mean, median, mode, percentiles, quartiles. Index numbers also work as some special averages which measures the relative change in a variable over a period of time. It also measures overall change in a group of variables. It measures the effect of changes over a period of time. Okay, so we can study how much the set of variables have changed over a period of time. Now how index numbers contribute, okay, is it helps in framing suitable policies. Once we know how is the relative change in the variable that we are talking about, maybe GDP or inflation rate or the consumer price index, then it helps us in framing policies based on that. Okay. It also reveals trends and tendencies, okay, that is followed by the relative change in the variable. It also helps in forecasting and deciding future policies. Once we know the trend that is followed by the change in the variable, okay, we can use it in forecasting, that is to predict the values in future and then accordingly decide on the future policies. Okay. It also helps in deflating. Deflating is a special kind of a process where we adjust the value of a currency based on inflation rate. Okay, so we find out what is the true value of a currency based on the various parameters that influence it, like inflation rate. The different types of index numbers that we come across are price index number. In case the variable that we are talking about is price, then it's a price index number. Then we have quantity index number. We have a value index number, which of course is a combination of price and quantity. And then special index numbers, they are defined specially for some purpose, for special purpose. Let's say for example, if I want to measure the productivity of a company, then the productivity will include many variables. They will come together and will define one overall variable. So the productivity index in that case will be a special index number. Now there are various factors which influence the construction of an index number. Okay. One is the purpose of defining index number itself. Okay. Now it's very important. The purpose of defining the index number is very clear, because there cannot be an index number which can be used for all the purposes. Okay, let's say for example, a consumer price index cannot include wholesale prices. Okay, so the index number will serve the purpose only for which it is defined. Okay, and it cannot be used for something else. So it's very important that you define the purpose. The purpose is very clear when you're constructing an index number. Then the base period selection. Okay, like when we are defining an index number, we find out the relative change in a variable in a particular time with respect to some earlier time. Okay, let's say for example, if I want to construct an index number, say price index number in 2020 with respect to in comparison with 2015, then 2020 becomes the current period and 2015 becomes the base period. Okay, so this base period selection also influences the index number, because the base period that we select should be an ideal normal period to which any other period can be compared. Okay, like this particular base period cannot have drastic changes in the variable that we are talking about. Then this base period should not be very far from the period under consideration. Like if you want to construct an index number for 2020, you cannot choose a base year very far, like 2000, 1990 or 1980. Okay, because there are quite many changes that happen in between these particular periods. So it may not be a very good representative of the index number or the relative change. The choice between fixed base and chain based also plays a role in defining index number. Okay. Now, when you're constructing an index number over a period of time, is that your base period will remain fixed for all the times later, or is that your base period is going to change after a period of time? That needs to be decided. So, in case the base period remains a fixed for all the relative change that you're going to measure later, then it is going to be a fixed base. Okay, but in case you are going to vary your base, okay, so say after every 5 years, so after every 10 years, then it is going to be a chain based index number. The number of items also play a very important role when you're constructing an index number. Let's say if you want to calculate the consumer price index. Okay. Now you have to be very clear how many items you're going to consider in your group. Okay. Not every item can be included as a representative in the group of variables that you're talking about. Okay. So we need to be clear about what items should be included and what items should not be included in the group of variables. The bias in reporting values representing the price and quantity also is an important factor. Okay. Now when you are collecting price of a particular commodity, now from where are you going to collect this price? Because different places might have different price values for that particular commodity. So when you are collecting these values, you have to make sure that these values come from an unbiased area, okay, or unbiased period. The choice of an appropriate formula or an averaging tool also plays an important role, because we know that we have arithmetic mean, median, mode, different averaging tools, harmonic mean, geometric mean. Okay. So it's important that you choose an appropriate formula when you are calculating this index number. Now there are various methods of constructing an index number. Okay. We broadly classify them as unweighted and weighted index numbers. In unweighted index numbers, we have simple aggregates and we have simple average aggregates. Okay. And in weighted index numbers, we have weighted aggregates and weighted average aggregates. Okay. So there are different ways of constructing an index number, and in our future, in our next modules, we'll be talking briefly about each of this method.